Hi, my name is Miss Vanoy, and I'm here to kind of pop in to help you with some of your writing assignment that's coming up in your language arts class. Um, and the next thing that you're getting to ready to do as a formal writing assignment is your focusing question task. So I want to help give you some tips and tricks and to show you some examples and non-examples to get you feeling really confident, because confidence is the biggest part of the battle with writing. Feel confident when you get started doing your writing assignment. So I'm going to put myself as a little face over here, and I'm going to present. Let's see how this works. I've had all kinds of technical difficulties today. Let's see. All right, it'll load. All right, now you've already done this, but I want to review it because it's so important to the writing piece you're getting ready to do. You've read the Poacher incident in the Castle Diaries, and you've went through and analyzed, which means break down, how sensory details are so important. That was your craft question for that lesson. So you've went through and looked and thought about, well, what did Tobias see? What did he hear? What did he smell and feel and taste? All of these details are so important for you as the reader, so that you can see how this, how you can have a picture in your mind. It becomes real. It's something that you remember more and that you relate to and connect to. So these words that the author used are very important. And these sensory details and the imagery are very, very important when you're reading something, especially like this, where you've not lived during this time period. You don't know what it looks like. You need to have those details to be able to really picture it. So you've already done this and you've thought about it from Tobias's point of view. Now you want to think about it from the point of view of the poacher. Now that other one is what we call a graphic organizer. This is done more as like a table. This is probably the easiest way to, as far as drawing it out. But then we wanted to show you like a different way to do it, which is like, here's the person right here. And then we're putting out to the side the exact same information we did with that table. We're putting details of what the poacher thinks. What does the poacher see? What does the poacher feel and hear? This is handout 6A, and this is a great way to do some pre-writing for your focusing question task. You've got to think of it now, not from the point of view of Tobias, but you're thinking of it from the point of view of the poacher. And that's going to really change and shift things, because we know from the book, we've kind of gotten to know who Tobias is. Now you've got to think about the poacher, and you've got to think about what his motivations are and what his feelings would be. Now, for example, to Tobias, he came off as very scary and angry. Tobias is a little boy, so of course he's going to be naturally scared of somebody who's angry and is bigger than him. But if you get into Tobias, or to the poacher's head, he may have felt really differently. He sees Tobias, who is a noble, and he's scared because he knows he's doing something bad, and he knows he's been caught. So he's really scared on the inside, but he's trying to project and keep quiet this boy so he doesn't get into any more trouble. So when you go through and do this graphic organizer, which I'm going to give you a few minutes, you can pause the video and go through and finish fill these things out. Go through and find details from the text about what you think the poacher thinks, what the poacher sees, what he feels, and what he hears. Some of it may be very similar to what Tobias feels, but maybe from the opposite point of view. So kind of go through and put some things. You're going to have to make some things up. You're going to have to take some sort of creative license, is what we call it. But you don't want to pick something that's so crazy that you're talking about microwaves, or you're talking about how Tobias spit in your face. That didn't happen in the story. You've got to stick to what was shown in the story, but think of it from the eyes of the poacher. So go ahead and pause, and let's finish up this handout 6A.
Excellent. Absolutely excellent.
All right, now that you're back, I want to remind you of the BME writing strategy. Since you are writing a narrative, it's a diary entry, you're still going to want to think about the beginning, middle, and end. In the beginning, how did the character feel? What was this conflict that happened? And how did the character feel in the end? Like, what kind of change did the character have? This BME strategy is important even for short writing assignments like a diary entry. That same narrative arc should be there. For instance, if you'd like to have text frames to make you understand this a little bit better, in the beginning, the poacher failed. In the middle, this problem happened. And by the end, the poacher failed. If you can write this short summary, then you've got a really good outline to what your story is going to be. So this may be the first thing. You may be the kind of writer who likes to use this as your pre-writing. Kind of summarize what you're going to write and have that, and then go back and look at the details that you got when you did Handout 6A. Now, I did some brainstorming. I went through just like these are the details that I put right here. These are the details that I put in that graphic organizer that had the man and the thought bubbles, things that the poacher sees. I talked about the tall grass, the water, riverbank, and I wanted to make sure I said, he sees Toby's face. That's something we didn't, because Toby's not going to see his own face, but the poacher's going to see Toby, and the Toby's going to see the poacher. So you want to make sure you kind of have that straight in your mind. The poacher's going to hear that fish slapping, the thump of the fish on the tree stump. Toby's going to be creeping up on him. Maybe he hears the crunch of the grass. There was a comment of Toby's where he said that he smelled like onions and ale on his breath. So maybe there is something to be said that maybe the poacher smells the same thing. Maybe that onions and ale that he ate is making him sick to his stomach, and now he's thinking, oh, I wish I hadn't ate that. But then again, maybe the fact that all he had was onions for the day, raw onions, was why he decided to go and steal that fish from the castle's moat. Maybe he even smells Toby's fear. And really, when you dig down deep and you think of it from the poacher's point of view, he feels scared and fearful. That's definitely probably where he's at. Now, here's the prompt, and I kind of broke it down. I'll move my face over this way. I broke it down like this, that to have a good criteria for success, you want to make sure that you've introduced the narrator, the poacher. Now, that sounds like common sense, but a lot of students really get confused on that, where they've been reading this book from the point of view of Toby. They sometimes have a hard time switching over to this different point of view. So really make sure that you have put yourself in the shoes of the narrator is the poacher. You've got to use sensory details to describe what he sees, feels, hears, smells, tastes, all those things. So your teacher's going to be looking for that. Are they really painting a picture with words and describing all these things that the poacher is feeling, to understand that through sensory details? Because that's the big skill we want to see. And then we want to make sure that you also stick to, is it realistic to the Middle Ages? You didn't talk about spaceships. You didn't talk about cell phones. You didn't talk about going to school. Those things were not things that were in Chromebooks, whatever. They were not in the Middle Ages. Again, you would think that would be common sense. I know a lot of you are like, well, duh. But actually, that's something sometimes we struggle with. We forget. A lot of people forget that TV wasn't here 100 years ago. So we've got to remember that. I'm making myself sound old, but I had a cell phone in high school. You all have had cell phones your entire life. You don't know. Some of you all probably don't even know, like my son doesn't know what it looks like for a telephone to be plugged into the wall and have access from your a home phone. So some things we forget that you're younger and just maybe haven't thought about a whole lot, that we as adults feel like it's common sense, but it's something that you just need to think about a little bit before you start writing. So those three things I would be really looking for as far as criteria. And here are some examples of what students have done in the past. Now, here's one that had a major, major issue. And I want you to look at this. There's a major issue here, and I want you to think about what the student did incorrectly. So I want you to pause the video, and I put my big thumbs up. Pause the video on my thumbs up, and I want you to read this to yourself. Okay, we're back. Hopefully you've read it and you paused it and you read this. The number one thing that's wrong with this, and I hope some of you all were able to see it, is not necessarily the fact, because a lot of students want to circle in on the fact that they didn't capitalize I. Teachers sometimes can do that, get really hung up on the grammar. Grammar is important. You have to have good grammar. You look like a dummy if you don't. But sometimes you can have like a mistake like that and it doesn't impede the understanding of the story. I can help you with your grammar. I can help you edit, but I can't get thoughts out of your head. So the ideas and organization and all that is really, really important. The voice that you come up with is important when it comes to as far as the traits of writing. So The number one thing is not these little kind of tiny mistakes and not capitalizing things or the run-on sentences. The number one mistake is this person wrote from the point of view of Toby. You have to write from the point of view of the poacher, not Tobias, because he says things like, he slipped out of school. He's walking along the riverbank. He spies a movement. He hears a noise. These are all things that Tobias did, not the poacher. So you're supposed to make sure you think of it from the poacher's point of view. You look at it, you glance at it, you think, oh, they did a pretty good job. They got the Dear Diary. They've got, a paragraph written. But actually, it's not, because they've completely missed the mark and gotten a novice because they didn't even follow the idea of writing from the poacher's point of view. Here's another example. This person did a great job. One thing that I noticed was they didn't exactly get the details right. You do have to make some things up to kind of fill in the blanks with the poacher, but you don't want to completely change certain things. Like, this is kind of nitpicky, but it's important. She says, or he says, Dear Diary, I went to the pond after a long day of work. Well, it wasn't a pond. It was actually the riverbank. So make sure you get those details that are told explicitly in the text right. Notice how this writer has different paragraphs. They have quotation marks, which means that they have either thoughts that are written out or dialogue that is. I noticed on this very last paragraph, just glancing through, the fact that they have this transition of then is really important. That shows that they've got the organization. I can tell just from glancing at it, the organization is there. They put their thoughts in a certain order. Then I would go back and read closely as the teacher to make sure that they had those sensory details. Here's another example of one that you might want to look at. I'll let you pause it to read through it. All right. This one, you can tell right from the bat. Today I was on the castle grounds down at the riverbank, catching fish like normal, making sure I moved down the riverbank to cover my tracks. You can tell from the very first sentence, this is the poacher, that he's trying to cover his tracks because he knows he's doing something that's wrong, but it's something that he has to do every day. It's kind of, even though they know it's wrong, it's something that they have to do to be able to eat. I like how, notice it's in boldface, they use the same dialogue that was in the story, but when they use that dialogue, they used it from the point of view of how the poacher said it. The boy stares at him. He leans down and the poacher grabs his shoulder. So he's all telling it from the point of view. He uses like I, me, and my of the poacher. Here's another great example from the very first sentence again. And you can pause this and read and come back. But from the very first sentence, I see how it's in the poacher's point of view. He's laying in the soft grass. I've got some sensory details there. I see dialogue. I see paragraph organization. This is a great example of the focusing question task. All right, here's another one. Pause and read. Now, first of all, we know just by glancing at it, it's short. And it's the fact that it's that short probably means that it doesn't have enough sensory details. But when I read through it, I at least see that he is the poacher. The person who wrote this actually wrote, I am the poacher. They kind of wrote it in a way that was a little bit clunky, but it is a diary entry, so it's okay if he writes it in like past tense, which is what this person did. There's lots of grammar mistakes, and they may have even the same amount of capital letter I's that aren't capitalized as that last writing, one of the previous writing pieces. But the fact that it's so much shorter and it's done in a way that is really causing me not to understand what they're even talking about. If I have to stop and reread a whole bunch, just short little phrases, that's not a good sign. So always read it back to yourself to make sure that you understand what you've read or what you've written. All right, here's another example. You can pause. Now, hopefully this gives you just kind of a start on what the focusing question task is. You're also going to want to add in, depending on how your teacher is assessing it, this idea of how the poacher's place in social hierarchy, how that plays a role in how he is, what's happening to him in the diary entry. So how that shapes who he is as a person, which goes back to that essential question about identity. So I hope that this has been helpful. Let me find my face. I hope this has been helpful. And if you have any questions, you can, of course, message me. You can email me. You can put stuff in the comments. And I guess that's all for now. Any more help? Contact me or your ELA teachers. Have a great day.